Welcome all. Thanks for coming in. I'd like to start with a acknowledgement of country. So, I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation upon whose ancestral lands the UTS City campus now stands. I'd also like to pay respect to the elders, both past and present, acknowledging them as the traditional custodians of knowledge for this land. At UTS, we also recognise the rich Indigenous culture of storytelling, and at the Academy, we're proud to continue this tradition, as stories are such a powerful way of connecting to each other. All right, welcome all. I'll go through who we are. So my name's Matt Estella. I'm the VFX lead in residence here at ALA, and
I am Ben Skinner. I was a student at the ALA, and then I kind of worked there, and now I'm in Toronto, Canada, at Tangent Animation, working in pipeline.
and so this webinar, we try and have a theme of sorts for each webinar we do. And so we thought with this one, we'd talk about international career opportunities within this industry and how the MAV can help. So let's move on to just a little bit of the usual overview of who we are and what we do. Usual preamble, we will be recording this. So people on the webinar side, you won't be seen or heard, so don't worry about that, but we will be answering your questions as part of this recording. So if you're uncomfortable with that, let us know, but should be fine, yeah? Okay, cool. All right. So, of course, that's how you ask questions on Zoom. Looks like people have already started to work with that, which is awesome. So use that Q&A box. All right, so let's get going. So let's do that little intro again. Here's us. Ooh, I never liked that picture. So I'm Matt Estella. I'm the visual effects lead here at UTS ALA, and
Still the pipeline technical director at Tangent Animation in Canada.
What a beautiful profile photo there. That is
one of my best.
So what we're going to be talking about. So a bit of an overview of who we are and what we do, some of the projects we've worked on, and some of the career opportunities for this industry and how ALA can help you get there, and of course a Q&A. So let's move on. So what is the UTS ALA? So I always call it the UTS ALA. Let me make that full screen. That didn't go so well. All right, so UTS ALA. So we are a collaboration between UTS and the animation studio Animal Logic, that's based here in Sydney. We were set up to recognize, we kind of recognized that there was a gap in the industry where a lot of students were finding it difficult to find work, and at the same time, a lot of studios, not just Animal Logic, but in Australia and around the world, were finding students didn't quite have the skills required to get a job in industry. We decided that we would set this up to try and strengthen our local talent pool, and also not just focusing on the visual effects side for film and TV, but also trying to anticipate what's coming up next. So we do a lot of work in virtual reality and augmented reality and other sort of emerging tech spaces. Probably the biggest part of what the Academy does is the Masters of Animation and Visualization, which we call the MAV for short. So it's a 1-year accelerated Masters. Most Masters tend to be a 1.5 to 2 years. We try and fit that into 1 year. And a big feature of what we do here is that we try and run this as much as we can like an actual studio. A line that we hear a lot from our graduates is when they drop into an actual studio, they say, oh, this feels just like it was at the MAV. Ben, back me up on that.
And that's one of the best things I kind of got out of it. It was that real world kind of environment. And like, it wasn't something that I was expecting to be one of the bigger things, but just being there kind of full time on campus was really good. And it's kind of, as I've then transitioned into work over here, it's felt like home almost, like it's just kind of mapped up really well.
Awesome. And so part of that is that we are very much a learning by doing. So we've had a few people sort of come in the first month or two kind of saying, so when did the Maya classes start? When did the new classes start? And we don't really do that. We just jump straight into making a short film, making projects, pitching work, and people learn by doing. the other big aspect of the work we do here is that it is collaboration. So a lot of people coming in from other courses will have, they'll have done team projects involving, say, 4 people, 5 people. Whereas really, when you're working in a studio, you're working in a team of 30, 40, 100, 200 people. It's big, big teams. And so here, for the first semester, when we start to work on our short films, we'll have the entire cohort working together on the one films, and people get used to that intense collaboration process. We run this like a studio, so we don't just use kind of sort of simplified versions of Python software. We go to the same toolkit, the same technology as used at most studios. In fact, in some cases, because we can, I guess, move fast and break things, we can almost jump ahead of what the industry does. So a good example is some of the technology Ben was working on and pioneered, which was using Pixar's USD technology, which was only really used in Pixar and a little bit at some studios. And when Ben studied with us in 2018, he helped develop a whole pipeline based around USD. And now we're seeing a lot of other industry studios coming up to meet us with that. In fact, you can probably hint at the work we're doing now at Tangent, Ben.
I can. It's definitely funny that we were kind of working on it in 2018. And as a team, we were like kind of putting out some YouTube videos. And now kind of as I'm in the industry, people have watched those early things that we were doing. And it's, a lot of the other graduates, as they've gotten into roles specifically with Pixar's Universal Scene Description, it's like, hey, can you help me on that thing? And then they're like, oh, sure. And it's turned out quite well. And I just saw Mohammed asked a question as well, and it's just kind of about how studio experience for new hires, and it kind of maps into what we were just talking about. And one of the big things for me choosing to do the MAV was that at the end of the year, not only did I have a master's, but I had 1 year of industry experience equivalents that kind of mapped up.
Yep. Oh, sorry, you finished talking. Cool. In terms of the industry-led components, the 3 leads we have at the moment, we've all been doing this for a while. I think we worked out how long we've worked in the industry, and it's like something like about 300 years in dog years of industry experience. So it's a lot of years. I almost don't want to count it, but I've been doing this for about 20 years. I think Dan's been doing this for maybe 12, 15. Alex has been doing it for about 20 to 25 years as well. We've been doing this for a while. In terms of guest speakers and masterclasses, we are completely shameless in terms of leaning on all of our industry friends and contacts. So we have a very close working relationship with Animal Logic. So if there's anything that we're not familiar with or don't know, which isn't much, we can always contact Animal Logic, and they are fantastic in terms of getting people in to help. So we've had the rigging supervisors at Animal Logic in, we've had R&D people, we've had services, we've had modelers, we've had, even in terms of production, we were very lucky when we wanted to have a little masterclass in terms of what is production, what is that side of the industry. We didn't just get one, but we got 3 top-line producers from Animal Logic in to have a chat and talk about the work. It's fantastic. Global industry exposure. So not only do we source people from Animal, but we get people from around the world in. So we've had guest speakers from Framestore, from Epic, from all kinds of places. And also we are getting recognized around the world. It's pretty remarkable how quickly we went from, we've only been around for about 4 years, but when we went to SIGGRAPH, our name is getting recognized. The kind of awards we're winning, the kind of sort of notice we're getting, it's cool. Like, we're now a player that's I think would take most schools quite a while to get up to that sort of echelon. We're already kind of hitting that, which is great. And as I mentioned before, we don't just work on film, but we really want to try and get people ready for not just film and VFX, but for anything involving visuals. So we do quite a lot of AR and VR work. We do a lot of real-time work. We do some data viz work. We want people just to be ready for any kind of experience of making visuals for any kind of medium. But sliding sideways a bit into what Ben will be talking about, it's a pretty common misconception that this industry is only for animators and modelers, and it's not that at all. I always like to say that this industry, there is a spectrum of skills required. And so down one end, you might have pure, say, artistic people, like say concept artists, and right down the other end, you've got pure R&D coders and developers. But in the middle is a spectrum of all these different kinds of roles that have a different ratio of artists versus technical. We have, and so we try and develop a strong coding background here. So, and we try and give everyone as much exposure to that side as they want. So we've had people come in from a pure computer science background, and they drop in and they learn what it is to be what's called a technical director in this industry. Maybe Ben, you want to talk about a bit about your experience and how you fell into your roles here?
Yeah, sure. So my background kind of was that technical side of things. I studied a Bachelor of Programming at kind of an Australian college called the Academy of Interactive Entertainment, and got my degree with the Canberra Institute of Technology. And I kind of came out of that with, good solid programming skills and a kind of a love for creating things and being creative. And I kind of came to the MAV and I was like, this kind of degree would be kind of perfect at kind of extending those skills to something that can become a little bit more, transferable into the industry. And kind of coming out of that, kind of like when Matt was saying, I discovered that it wasn't like I'm going to be a programmer on this end or I want to be an artist on that end. I've just kind of lived in that range, kind of going back and forth, and it's kind of exciting. Just it kind of becomes like you got to pick the right tool for the right job, and that was one of the things that the MAV kind of showed me that could be an option, which I kind of hadn't really thought about before.
Yeah, cool. And I'm just spinning through these other bullet points quickly. It's also a common misconception that to work in this industry, even if you want to do a more technical role, that you have to be an amazing artist, illustrator, you have to have had sculpting experience. It's not like that at all. You just have to have an interest. Oftentimes, the roles for the technical roles within this industry are more about supporting artists. And so I think a nice point of differentiation of learning a technical craft with the MAV versus say doing a more traditional computer science degree, or in fact sort of augmenting on top of a computer science degree, is that sense of it's not all kind of design documents up front and class structures and diagrams. It's very much you have to talk to artists and say, well, what is the problem which you are trying to solve? And you have to go away and think about it and then present stuff back and then keep iterating. So this industry is really big on lots of iteration, lots of versions and feedback, but that goes for the coding side as well. And so coders have to get used to, you are never hitting like a version 1 perfect solution. You are just constantly refining and polishing until it's good enough that you are kind of helping save time and money.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things the MAV does really well, because it's those interpersonal skills that you get because you're all in the one space. It's kind of a bit open plan, and just kind of the interactions you get. A lot of artists are kind of like, well, I just got to model this thing by hand over and over and over again. And it's kind of on the technical side where you can be like, well, we can kind of automate it this way, or we could make it a little bit more procedural with Houdini. And it really fosters that kind of those relationships.
Yeah. And it is worth pointing out with that last bullet point slide that, again, because of that the common misconception, or everyone sort of defaults thinking of, if I want to work in this industry, I'm going to be a modeler or an animator. It means that a lot of undergraduates just aren't aware of all these other different kinds of roles, especially the more technical roles. What that translates to is that, generally speaking, there are more modelers and animators around than there are jobs available, but there's always a shortage of good technical people. And so of all of our graduates from the past 3 years, all of our more technically inclined folk have found work almost straight away. That's one. Okay. Things I've worked on. We've worked on all kinds of things. Again, as I mentioned before, we've been in this industry for a long, long time. So we've worked on all kinds of films, both good and some not so good, but experience, it's good. And let's talk a bit about what you do in the year here. So we run three sessions. It's a long year. So we start in January and end in November. And it is 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. We compared to a lot of other master's courses that have sort of maybe occasional contact with your staff, sorry, with your kind of teachers and leads, we are here with the same schedule, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. So again, replicating that studio experience. So you get to see your staff and your leads all the time. The first semester, we work on VFX. So that's where we will work out an idea for a short film, and we will develop it and get it up to, I guess the closest analogy in the VFX side is what's called temps, where you get it up to a stage where we have each shot is completed to some capacity. So it's not finals yet, but we have a pretty good sense of what the film is. So we've got, you can say roughly it's about halfway complete. We then put the film on pause for a bit, and in the second semester we work on anything new, so any sort of emerging technology. And so the groups have to go research everything which is sort of new and hot now. They then have to pitch ideas in that space, and then they will then break up into small teams where they have to sell that idea. And what's interesting is all of the skills they learned in terms of making a short film in the first semester, they then have to really apply and kind of showcase in this semester. So whereas for the first semester, it's everyone. So for this year, it was all 42 students working on one film. We then break into 7 teams. So each team has maybe say 5 or 6 people, and they have to run and gun, and kind of whatever skills they have, they've got to really kind of step up and showcase to make the best possible pitch they can make. And then in the third semester, we will pick one of those emerging tech ideas, and we'll finish it to a really high quality, as well as finish the short film. So the third studio, when people walk in, visitors and stuff, and they walk in and go, oh, this just feels like a working animation studio. Because that's kind of what it is. It's just people just knuckling down and getting it done. And then we race for the finish line, which is around the end of November, and we have a big showcase party, and that's it, we're done. What was your memory of that year, Ben?
Look, it got intense at times, but it was all very fulfilling, and it was never more intense than I could handle. And it was kind of at every point where there might have been like a faltering of like, I don't know what to do, the leads were like always there to guide and then give kind of experience and some context to it all. And I think just being in the same boat with the whole cohort, it created relationships that I still have even today. And at the end of the year, we'd had this studio experience, and we created some really good stuff that I'm still proud of today.
Yeah. Awards. We're getting recognized. So we're winning loads of awards for all kinds of things. We're getting lots of amazing feedback from industry. We've got a really high graduate rate. Something that we're pretty proud of is the gender split. And this industry tends to skew quite heavy male versus female, but we're now sort of like pulling it back more towards 50-50, and we're hoping that can sort of be the change we want to see in the world. And we're doing some pretty cool research as well. So as well as the masters, the MAP, we have a pretty active a PhD stream, which are doing all kinds of very cool research, and that's getting recognized. We're getting some quite cool funding in for that. So if anyone's interested in a PhD, you should also look into that. Some of the projects we've worked on. So running it through. So as I said, every year we make a short film, and we make some sort of real-time project. Some years we get very ambitious, and we might do 2 real-time projects. But as well as that, as part of the research side, one of our research students, is that what they call them? Research students? Research candidates. Yeah. He's working specifically in making kind of hybrid short films, and that's getting recognized. So that was Jasper, and that's got all kinds of awards. It's very cool. You should check that out if you haven't seen it yet. Ben, you worked directly on Color Thief and on Explorer, which isn't on this list. That's outrageous. But you had a hand in most of these in some capacity. So Territory was obviously before your time, as was Jasper. But everything else here, you had a bit of a
little bit of a touch. I mean, it was lots of other people as well, but it was really fun to kind of jump around between different ideas and different stories to tell, or with that kind of one idea of, solving things with technology and kind of everything that the MAV offers.
Yeah, and I think what I'm quite sort of proud of as well is that we really do sort of try and well, actually, I was going to say we really try really hard, but it's actually we don't. This almost kind of happens as a byproduct. So every year when we ask the students to give us ideas for films and for real-time projects, it just gets workshopped, and we'll kind of discuss it and play with it in different ways. And just naturally, we end up with these quite diverse worlds. And so the fact that we've had an alien-themed world, two quite baroque underwater worlds, a dystopian sci-fi world, and all of our more, I guess, sort of creative visual style students they just go research, and they just do sort of incredible, style exploration stuff. You can see some of the artwork behind me here. That was for Explorer, and again, just having it's amazing where we say, right, here is our brief and the kind of thing we're going for. Show us what this world is, and within a week, we'll generate hundreds of pieces of artwork. Where if you have say 6 or 7 students who are all in a bit of friendly competition and trying to work out what the world is going to be, you just come up with this amazing diverse world set, which is very cool.
Yeah.
But moving on to international careers, so we've had a pretty good track record of having students join us from overseas, but also after graduation, we've had a pretty good track record of our grads going to work overseas, so which we have the lovely Ben here has done that. We've also got Wen working in London at Double Negative, who was hired straight out of the course. We've now got Emma working in London as well. We've had other people in all kinds of places right across Asia. And I think what's kind of worth pointing out as the side state is that demand is only growing. So, if you think about the amount of screens around the world, I think it's fairly kind of simple and obvious to think about kind of, movie theaters and TV screens. But then it also expands out to every mobile phone, every tablet, and then coming up soon, every AR and VR device, and all these screens are going to need content, and all that content has to be made by people. And that's why it's a pretty busy industry for jobs.
Yeah.
So how to apply? Basically, go to the website. We've got all the instructions there. We try and run the application process a lot like industry. So it's primarily portfolio based. So if you are focusing on the more visual sides of this industry, you just want to put together a collection of your best work. If you're a developer, tell us about the kind of technical projects you've worked on. Maybe Ben, do you want to talk about the kind of stuff you showed us when you applied?
Yeah, I kind of showed a mix. I was interested in both, but on the code side, there's a website where you can share code called GitHub. I shared a link to that. I'd done some other projects, and I kind of just put the code up there. I also had like an Instagram where I'd been making some more technical art pieces, which I think I shared. Mostly just, showing things. I was kind of a little bit worried about what to put in. Like I wrote up a little email, which is probably very embarrassing if you read it back today. Just how excited I was to apply.
And I've got it here. I'm going to read that for everyone.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I think I found it by accident the other day. But no, just showing lots of everything I've done above a certain quality. Like I didn't show them, something I just worked on for 5 minutes, but stuff that I'd done throughout my education, my personal time.
Yeah, cool. It's worth pointing out that there's a master's, so you need to have an undergraduate degree or equivalent. So that can be X years of industry experience or some sort of tertiary education degree. And of course the personal statement, which Ben was just talking about. Once we get that, we'll have a look and we'll work out if we want to have a chat. So we'll organize a face-to-face interview either through Skype or webcam or in person. And we'll just have a little chat about the software you've used, and maybe if you need to skill up on some things before you start with us. But really importantly, we need it's good to get your application in early because quite a few times we've had people apply and they'll show us the work, and you can see that there's potential, but they're missing a key component. But if you get it in, say, around now, there is time to get that skill up to standard. and we are more than happy to give people advice and say, well, if you just learn this thing, that'll tip you over the line. We are pretty busy on the social medias, so we're always sharing all our news and tips and tricks and little videos and teasers and stuff on all the things. And we have lots of our work up on our website as well. So there's a link there. Well, thanks for joining, everyone. Thank you, Ben. It's fabulous, as
Thanks
always.
for having me. Thanks for having me. It's been good.
You're a peach. All right, I think that's it. So thanks all, and we'll talk to you soon.